Raw 5/20/24, the Amplified Review. This show starts Chad Gable vs. Samuel Zayn. Non-title matchup. QR codes for Uncle Howdy's new stable were once again flashing. Full disclosure, not only has BC not had any time to look these things up, but full disclosure, even if I did, there's no way I'd be able to decipher any of them. I'm on a GED in 3 semesters of community college before I finally said check you. So I've decoded none of these. And I probably couldn't decode any of them. So when they debut, it's going to be BC's real first impression of this new faction. I have not decoded or looked up any of these QR codes, guys. None. It just feels like homework. When they first did it with Bray Wyatt, it was different. You kind of had to know what everything meant. But with this faction, I just know it's going to lead to something I want to see. I can't wait to see Uncle Howdy, Bo Dallas, and his new faction. I hope they do right by them and Bray Wyatt. So I'm very much looking forward to it. You guys know that. But this just seems like a lot of homework, man. As it is, while the show's on, I'm doing all my due diligence on the notes. I don't have time to start cracking codes like Inspector Gadget. There's no time for that. There's no desire. I'm sure it's fun for a lot of you guys, though. Hopefully it's keeping up that intrigue. But I'm looking forward to that debut for sure. But these QR codes were once again flashing, one vividly right before a commercial break. Now, as far as this match, the best part of Chad Gable versus Samuel Zayn, the best part in this match, easily, was Maxxine and Tozawa separately refusing to give Sami a cheap shot while Gable was distracting the referee. So Gable is perfectly distracting the ref. Maxxine just has even a slap, a little ring to the eyes, something, right? Take out some perfume, sprayed and Sami at something, right? Nothing. Maxxine just has a conscience. So Gable is pissed. Few moments later, Tozawa now has the chance to make Gable proud, right? So Gable once again has the referee perfectly distracted. Tozawa has grown a conscience. He does not want to do anything. No rig to the eyes, nothing. No little poke to the eyes, nothing. So Gable's absolutely pissed. And by the way, Otis also would disobey, but that would be after Alpha Academy was thrown out, Tozawa and Maxxine. Because once they chose not to help out Gable did his best impression of a referee. Roll in the hands, you're out of here! And he throws out his own academy. It was great. Now, you guys know how funny Gable is anyway. I hate to see him in just a comedy act, but especially when he turned heel, you were hoping like the comedy was kind of gonna go to the wayside, but it's clear that he can juggle the two, right? It's like Kurt Angle. When he was a heel, he just juggled comedy so fluently and flawlessly. And Gable's the same way. And if you had any questions or reservations about that, last night proved that he can juggle the two. Man, that impressionation of the ref, because I was thinking, like, do that, man. That'll be hilarious if you do the whole ref impression. And he did it. It took a while. He built it up, and he threw Maxxine and Tozawa out. Now, as I said, Otis would also disobey, right? Once again, distracting the referee. Now it's Otis's turn. And at that point, again, I do believe Maxxine and Tozawa are already thrown out. But Otis now has a chance. Otis does not do it. Grows a conscience. Does not want to do anything to Sami Zayn. So Gable's pissed again. Goes to the outside. Slaps Otis right across the jawline. Just smacks this dude. Says, I got to do everything myself because you're too stupid. Grabs the IC championship. Gets back in the ring. And moments later, I think, that is when Gable actually pins Sami Zayn. What was the actual finish? Gable would eventually pin Sami with the assist from Sami's own IC championship, which again, he grabbed after he got pissed by Otis. And it was Otis that had the massive assist with that IC championship. So Otis finally did the right thing, according to Gable. The wrong thing to Sami Zayn and everybody in that crowd, because they wanted Otis to really finally stick it to Gable, right? Say, we're done. Knock this dude flat on his ass, but that didn't happen. Otis, and the IC championship had the massive assist in this Gable victory. So this was a fun match, thanks to how absolutely great Chad Gable is. It just sucks that the feud itself should have been better, right? Gable versus Sami Zayn could have and should have been so much better. When Gable turned heel in Quebec, in Montreal, and in front of Sami's own friends and family, and he turns heel and he's got his leg locked, and Sami's thriving in pain, and we go off the air, that's when you're like, oh, this is going to be one of the best feuds. They could, if done properly, this could go through the summer and we'd be into it. And all of a sudden, they threw Bronson Reed in pretty quickly and it was diluted. I mean, the feud became non-existent. I told you guys in last week's Raw review, when Sami came out in the third hour, I forgot Sami was on the roster, much less an IC champion. So I damn sure was already forgotten about Bronson Reed, Chad Gable, and Samuel Zayn in a triple threat match for the aforementioned title. That's how irrelevant it just seems. And that's how much one person added in can absolutely devalue and dilute a feud, storyline, or straight up match. And that's what Bronson Reed did. It's no fall through Bronson Reed, by the way. It's just Paul Levesque McMahon just had nothing for Bronson for the longest time and said, I'm going to throw him a bone and throw him in Chad Gable and Sami Zayn's business. Problem is, he has no business being in that business. Anyway, that's the side rant. That's the only thing bad here, is that that's really your payoff, right? We've already seen Sami and Gable a couple of times. It doesn't elevate now. You're just going to add in Bronson this Saturday in Saudi for the triple threat. But this could have been and should have been so much better with Sami and Gable, man. But the real thing here, anyway, what we are going to get, which is pretty damn cool, is that payoff when Alpha Academy finally says, enough, we're done. And they finally stick it to Chad Gable. That's going to be the ultimate payoff. The crowd is really building into it. You're starting to notice that even more week by week. So pretty damn cool. No harm, no foul on this opening segment and match. And again, Gable just made it so fun. Everything this dude does is just gold. And being a heel now, you can open up a whole new avenue that he couldn't tap into before as a face. And I really do believe we're just scratching the surface of such. Now, moving on. This was pretty big. This was, I now know why Paul Levesque McMahon didn't give Dragonov a piece of the rocket last week. His first matchup, his debut, he's losing to Jey Uso with a splash. Dragonov. It's not a normal dude, and he's just losing via splash to Jey Uso. Carmelo, right? Melo comes in. Melo's only won 1 out of 5 main roster matchups. 1 out of 5. All he does is miss. Well, now we know why, right? He had to save every piece of that rocket because he gave it all to Bron Breakker last night. Listen to this Raw debut. Bron Breakker faces Kale Dixon. That's right. This isn't a made-up name from the local bingo hall. It's a real dude last night. Kale Dixon. I just love, sounds like it's a character in a show, right? Who was Dixon? Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon. That's where it was. Well, maybe Kale Dixon is a long-lost brother, but Bron Breakker versus Kale Dixon. The only thing more vicious than the first spear that Braun delivered to Dixon was the second spear that Braun delivered to Dixon, and that was on the outside, and that had a running start. These two spears were massive, and this is why I tell you guys, you don't want somebody like Jey Uso. Much respect to that dude, one of my favorite tag teams. My favorite tag team in this industry is the Usos. I tell you it all the time. That's how much respect I have for Jey. But damn, him doing a spear, just stop. It's not a good spear, nor is it realistic. And you're going to want to save that for the wrestlers that do the spear. You don't want to dilute or devalue the spear, right? When Roman Reigns comes back, he's going to do that spear. If Edge ever had a comeback match or a comeback tour, don't want that spear. Braun Strowman does the spear. If you see Brock Lesnar or a Goldberg, that's who you believe is going to knock people out with spears. Not Jey Uso, because then where does it end? Then you're going to have Tozawa. Once he breaks away from Chad Gable, he'll be doing the spear. You laugh, but that's where we're getting to. If everybody has a knockout spear, and I've seen Jey Uso win matches with a Jey Uso spear. I bring that up again, which I've done several times in the past week or two, because this is a situation where you want to make the spear special by somebody who's performing it, making them come across as special. Braun Breaker, that first spear, you are quickly reminded how a spear should be delivered and how devastating a spear truly could be when utilized by the right individual in the right situations. And the second spear doubled that notion, duly noted to an amplified level, because that second spear pretty much knocked Kale Dixon right out of his boots. And the only thing more vicious than the second Breaker spear was the third Breaker spear. And at this point, the referee had already called off the match. Bron Breakker won this match via referee stoppage. I mean, Kale Dixon didn't even know his name at that point. So the referee stops the match, but that didn't stop Bron Breakker. So Breakker delivers a third spear. And then on the outside, somehow Kale Dixon has his dome piece wedged up on the steel steps. There's all these suits and ties and referees. They were able to actually back up Bron Breakker. That's the good news. The bad news is once they pushed back Breakker, they didn't see what he was grabbing. He grabs a steel chair. He comes back to take Kale Dixon, and he literally rattles the dome piece of Dixon with a steel chair while his dome piece was on the steel steps. Kale Dixon was on his way to the emergency room. There was no Kale. Man, that's a debut. I mean, he got annihilated by Bron Breakker. Backstage, Adam Pearce comes across Bron Breakker, and Pearce is like, I can't have you running rogue on my brand. You can't do that ever again. And Bron Breakker says, you can't control me. He says, you left me out of the King of the Ring tournament. And something else after that maybe, but we found out like what the destruction is for. It's because he feels so disrespected that he was left out of the tournament. And now Bron Breakker is on a rampage. You could have stopped this easily at the spears, the annihilation, and that's it. I don't know if this character or this situation needed to have such a vivid and vicious ending with the steel stairs on the steel steps and the dome piece of Dixon. And you have the ambulance riding off with Kale Dixon in the back. I don't know if Braun needed all of that. It could have been effective just with the annihilation from the three spears. Because people were already on their feet like, whoa, these spears were vicious. These were wild spears. You already had everybody, right? So it's cool. I'm not complaining about it, right? It was one of the coolest parts of Raw, no question. But you could have saved that for another character that really needed that, right? Braun can be annihilating these people in the ring and outside like that second spear, but leave those vicious attacks for a character that really needs it. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't think you needed to actually go extra here, right? This is one of the scenarios you could have pulled back a little. Do that last night, the extracurricular activity, but do it with another character, another situation. Save that. Instead, they just put all of their eggs into one basket. They put all their chips onto that one table, and they bet on that one dude, Bron Breakker. I hope it works out. The problem with Levesque McMahon that I've noticed is he'll give you these weeks where you seem ultra pushed, right? Like the company is going to back you tenfold, amplified. Like the absolute pinnacle, right? You're headed to the top. Your momentum cannot be stopped. Levesque McMahon has given you a whole mile. But then, wham, he'll take you back 10 miles. I keep bringing up Xia Li. Like, for a few weeks, it looked like she wasn't just winning matches. She was knocking individuals out. And it was so beautifully done, too, by Indy Hartwell, Candice LeRae. They were selling it so good. And Xia is so good at what she does that fans literally thought Xia was injuring wrestlers. And they were, like, trying to get Xia off TV. And that was like, that's exactly what you would want. And after just a couple of victories, Xia then took a couple of straight losses and then sat at catering for 2 months and then was told just to go home. You're released. It looked like she was going to the moon. Remember Cameron Grimes? Remember Cameron Grimes in his debut, and it looked like, okay, they're going to have some, and then all of a sudden, Cameron Grimes is taking L after L, sitting at catering and then at home. I'm not saying that's happening to Braun Breaker, but you can go over and over all of these scenarios where, you know, you get a little bit of a win streak. It looks like the company's backing you, and then all of a sudden, they do the exact opposite out of nowhere. It's like you started to build all that equity. Why would you ruin it? So I'm not going to put all the chips on the table for that debut last night. As of last night, it looked like Paul Levesque McMahon is betting the house on Braun Breaker because he is a house. But on the flip side, knowing Paul Levesque McMahon's booking, it could just as fastly do a turnabout. And so I'm going to reserve like the excitement of Braun Breaker going forward. I want to see another few weeks of how they're going to roll this dude out. But this is the review of last night, and damn, that was pretty interesting, man. And he needed that. Levesque McMahon probably, there's no probably, he was thinking he had to go extra because they hurt Braun Breaker, right? They did him a little bit of a disservice, a little bit of an injustice for Braun Breaker. They left him in NXT way too long. Now, some people would say that's a good thing, right? You don't want to go to the main roster. But we know that well over a year ago, this dude should have been on the main roster, right? It was WrestleMania last year, or the stand and deliver for the NXT, whatever all that was. That's when we knew that was his time. And then he stayed in NXT, and you guys remember what happened the whole last year? He collected L after L after L. Then they put him in a tag team with Baron Corbin. I mean, that was not the year you would probably thought you were going to have. You thought last year around Mania, you were going to the main roster, and you were going to be a big deal. They waited an entire year. And then when he gets drafted, they keep him off 2 more weeks. It's absolutely wild, man. So nobody knew what was going on with Braun. Like, what are they waiting for? Because you can't say, oh, they felt he was too green and he couldn't handle the main round. No, have you seen the matches he's had in NXT? He's just fine. And this is the way they're going to book him anyway. Like almost Goldberg-esque, quick spears, annihilation, done. Doubt he takes 60 seconds of full offense in a match. Doubt most of his matches go 60 seconds. So there was no reason. They just didn't have anything, and that's their thing. They just don't have anything for most of these wrestlers. So he probably felt he had to go extra last night, but he didn't. The crowd was in the palm of their hands, palm of WWE, palm of Paul Levesque McMahon's hands, just with palm of Bron Breakker's hands, just with the spears alone. Didn't even need the chair shot on the steel steps. But pretty damn cool. You know, if you want to go that extra bit, no matter who it's for, it's a television show. We're absolutely going to want to watch entertainment. And watching Braun Breaker annihilate, and seeing Kale Dixon off to the Haas, that's entertainment. What a debut, man. I could go on and on about it, but I'll just leave it at that. Dixon got the ass whooping for the ages. You would have thought Kale Dixon was hitting on Cora Jade. That was that type of beating that Braun put. Like, you know, he found out right before he went to the ring that Cora Jade was getting hit on by Kale Dixon. That really enraged Braun Breaker. Wild debut. Then we went to the end of hour 1. And the beginning of hour 2, actually. This was the Queen of the Ring semifinal. Io Sky versus Lyra Valkyria. Val pins Io to advance. There you go. We were all wondering, what way do you go here? Tiffany Stratton was supposed to win this thing. We discussed that in yesterday's preview. We kind of thought that. Then I got a little bit of a report of that. And then I pretty much got confirmation on that. Like a Clorox wipe. It was 99.99%. It was Tiffany Stratton's, and it made the most sense, obviously. It fits the character, Queen Tiffany. Could you imagine if now she has a crown? You thought it was Tiffy time before. But of course, all that happened last week, which we talked about in yesterday's preview. And they didn't cancel Tiffany Stratton, but they stopped Tiffy time. And they had this weird thing. The ending was supposed to kind of write Belair off with the knee injury. They still went with that so that she can lose to like a Nia Jax. But yeah, they went with Bianca, and now she's selling this knee injury even though she won. So it's going to come down to, you got to believe now they're going to do Nia Jax Val, right? There's no reason to really go face-to-face here and have Val defeat Bianca Belair. And then you just decide you go full throttle with Val's debut on the main roster and have her win an entire King of the Ring tournament, Queen of the Ring. Do you put this crown? Do you put that crown? Do you shine it up and do you give that to Val? Or are you going to have Queen Nia? Maybe that's the character that Nia and WWE has been searching for Nia. Who knows? But Val defeated Io. That was one of those wild cards. It really was. They could have easily went Io here, and nobody would have batted an eyelash. Nobody would have had a problem with that. Val's debut is in this tournament. Val makes it very far. Val made it to the semifinals. And Io, your former champion for many, many months, who held that division down, did the right thing at Mania, one of the best wrestlers on the planet for the females. Yeah, Io beat you. That's nothing to bitch about. But they decided to go with Val. And just like Io, there's no right or wrong here. There's no way you can truly be angry at that. Val is very good. I've been trying to much more vividly assess Val since she's been on the main roster. And, you know, there's a lot of times the main roster calls up a lot of talent that they didn't do anything in NXT, right? Or they just weren't a focal point. They didn't win the titles. They weren't in main events. They're talent that easily was passed over for others. So not saying they're bad at all, but they weren't. Like Lacey Evans got called up, leapfrogged everybody, and she came from a very big class of top stars, and Lacey Evans leapfrogged everybody. There was another NXT talent recently. Started with a K. I forgot what it was. Man, drawing a blank. You guys probably know exactly who I'm talking about. But she was in while Dixon was getting into the ambulance. She ran up to Adam Pearce last night and she was like, "Can I help you at all?" I forgot her name, man, but she was just called up from NXT. And she's, you know, not bad, but she didn't do anything that was like main events or capturing titles in NXT, and she just gets called up while Roxy is down there still, and so many others. And she got called up to the main roster, like leapfrogged everybody. And you're like, well, wait, it's already a crowded roster. How is she going to make a difference unless you have some big plans for her? Which we hope is the case, and we hope she thrives. But what I'm getting at is that Val could have been in that, right? The difference is they were making something out of Val. They did in NXT give her the title. So there was a little bit more substance behind the name. She gets to the main roster, and that's where it's really going to come to fruition. It's a sink or swim situation. Val is absolutely swimming, shore to shore. She doesn't even look like she's out of breath, man. There's people waving their arms, middle of the Atlantic, looking for the life preserver. Val's just lapping them. She's doing really good work, man. So that's what I'm getting at. There was a no-lose situation here. None of us can lose. There's no right or wrong. Both are deserving to get to the next round. They went Val. I don't know. I don't want to speak in circles and start saying the same things in different ways. That's the decision they made. I'll stand behind it. She's good. This Val is good. Post-match, Io screams in Japanese. That's got us. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish with that. Just don't do anything at all, then. As long as you're not showing mutual respect and Io shaking hands with Val. No. But she just starts screaming. But that was Asuka's character. Remember, they just had her be like the crazy screaming in Japanese girl. No, stop. It didn't work for Asuka. That's not what EO is. EO has much more poise than that, first of all. So while Asuka's out, are they just going to try to make EO the new Asuka? Stop. Just because they're both Japanese doesn't mean they're the same person, Paul Levesque McMahon. They're different humans. They're different people. So, one of those things, bro. But that was a big decision last night. They went Val. Then backstage, Paul Levesque McMahon had Dragonov say, and I quote, "There's no shame in losing to Jey Uso." What are you talking about? You're Dragonov. There's no shame in losing to Jey Uso? There's no shame in taking an Uso spear, which is one of the worst I've ever seen in the business, and then a simplistic splash. And that's what caused you to look up at the lights when you're in a tournament to become the king. Like, you can't get the first impression back, right? You only get one chance at that. So that's what everybody's for. Okay, Dragonov, I heard a lot about him. Oh, okay. Go Jay. What are you talking about? Now, I know this was an absolutely fully scripted promo that Levesque McMahon wanted Dragonov to say, right? Just go out there and say there's no shame because there's all this backlash and people are like, what the heck? That's not believable. So go out there and say there's no shame. So Dragonov says there's no shame in losing to Jey Uso. He is, after all, main event Jey. What did we do? You have in 2 weeks somehow seemed to devalue Dragonov to a point where I didn't think you could devalue him to. Now, I'm not saying the dude's buried or anything like that. Trust me. And Levesque McMahon knows when he's wrong and he overcorrects, right? So you're probably going to see a lot of, hopefully anyway, some solid booking going forward. But you'll never be able to get that back, right? I mean, that matchup, that first impression, show everybody what they've been hearing about Dragonov. And if you haven't heard anything about Dragonov, you're about to know exactly why everyone's talking about Dragonov. Nope, that didn't happen. He just became another dude on the roster last week. And this week, he gave the old, there's no shame in losing to Jey Uso. We love Jey Uso, but you're Dragonov. You can't be cutting promos like that. And then Ricochet comes up. Ricochet's like, I want a rematch, man. We set the bar. I feel that we did really good. Ricochet's probably thinking, damn, Jey Uso beat you. I want to try again. I can beat you. How sad is that the dude Dragonov beat, that's the dude that now looked at the match last week and was like, actually, you ain't. Let's do it again. So Ricochet then gets absolutely speared out of his little glasses, his little Ricochet glasses that he put, he tries to be a little bit more sophisticated. He puts on the little glasses. He got speared right out of those sumbitches last night by Bron Breakker. Bron Breakker out of nowhere. Ricochet's trying to get his rematch with Dragonov, and Bron Breakker just spears this dude like into the equipment casing. You know how they have all those big black boxes, a lot of it's electrical equipment. He puts Ricochet right through. I mean, Bron Breakker was at that point just spearing mofos. Probably has way too much respect for Dragonov, so maybe he was leaning left. He saw that it was Dragonov and tilted last second, and the spear went for Ricochet. But Bron Breakker's wrath continued backstage. But just to see Dragonov talking about, oh, it's okay, it's just a loss, and it's no big deal against Jey Uso. I'm like, dude, is that really his character already? I can lose, and it's okay, and Jey Uso, they do call him main event, so I guess it's no big deal. Stop. Come on, man, you're Dragonov. And Paul Levesque McMahon has to know it's Dragonov. Maybe he doesn't even watch the NXT product anymore, sadly. I don't know, but he's got to talk to Shawn Michaels. Because Dragonov has to be better booked than what we've seen the last 2 weeks. The loss to Jey Uso 2 weeks ago, last night, and that stupid-ass promo. A 3-hour show, and Dragonov is just talking about there's no shame in losing to Jey Uso. There is when you're Dragonov. You are a tier above, 2, 3, 4 tiers above the average. You got to act like it. They got to showcase you like it. Moving on. Gunther cuts an empty arena promo from earlier in the day, says he shouldn't have dismissed Jey Uso, but regardless, he's winning their semifinal and becoming king. When it was all said and done, that would not be a prediction. That was actually a spoiler. Awesome Truth defeated Judgment Day next. R-Truth defeats J.D. McDonuts. Truth and Miz retain the titles because this was a title match. Carlito would interfere for the Day of Judgment, but Braun Strowman stopped those numbers pretty quickly. So they involved Carlito, they involved Braun Strowman, but even with Carlito's involvement, they did not get those titles. And backstage, Damian Priest was still pissed off. In fact, Carlito may have made Judgment Day even more chaotic and not in a good way. Because backstage, Damian was like, what have we become? Like, what happened to us? We used to be prestige. It's almost like missing that main piece of that puzzle, Rhea Ripley, mommy. Losing the mommy, losing Rhea Ripley. Kind of, it left Judgment Day searching for a lot of answers. It absolutely fractured Judgment Day, and it doesn't look like they're going to be on the mend. It looks like Damian Priest will eventually go off on his own. Dominic is still injured. McDonuts is literally a jobber. I used to say glorified jobber. He's just a jobber. He's literally today's Brooklyn Brawler. What Brawler was in the 80s, early 90s is what McDonuts is today. So who does that really leave? Finn Balor, he's lost in flux. You forget Finn Balor's even on the roster, unfortunately. He just signed a new contract. But he's very much irrelevant. And then you have new addition Carlito, who's just causing more issues with Judgment Day. I don't know. Braun Strowman returned after being gone for a year, and he's pretty irrelevant too. They stuffed him in this weird business with Judgment Day. And if it's done correctly, I'm okay with it. If it's fun, if it's interesting, right? If it intrigues, piques our curiosity, that's cool. But Braun Strowman just doing run-ins since he's been back for a few weeks. He sees the numbers are not right. He does his Steiner math, his Strowman math in the back. Wait a second. There's 5 of you and 3 of them. I'm coming down. Well, you can only do that for so many weeks before people are going to be like, oh, right, it's not Tiffy time, but it's Strowman time. He's about to come down because I'm counting 5 on 4. Anyway, can you tell you could have booked this a lot better, man? Next, it's hour number 3, and it's time to decide the number 1 contender for the women's tag titles. You guys know what that means. You know what that means. I'll say it again. It is time at the top of hour 3 to decide new number 1 contenders for the women's tag titles. You know how we're going to do this. It's the same way we always decide number 1 contenders for the dudes. It's going to be a fatal 4-way. And what's funny, not in a good way, we were talking about it vividly in the preview yesterday. We did a live stream. I wasn't able to be live with you guys for a while. So yesterday into the evening, I was able to be live with you guys. It was only supposed to be an hour, ended up being 2 hours. You guys were absolutely off the chart. Much love and respect to all you guys. That was just such an awesome live stream. But anyway, we were talking about a piece of that stream. We were talking about how the fatal 4-ways have to stop, because until they do, you're never really going to have a division that people care about. Because every time we need a new number 1 contender, you're just parading all of your tag teams out there in one match. And it's like, how can you get behind anybody? You're trying to just keep up at that point. You can't truly get invested in any team, let alone the match, let alone what's on the line. At WrestleMania, they had a fatal 4 or fatal 5-way for the tag team and for the titles. I'm like, what are you doing, man? There's 2 separate titles on the line in the same match with like 4 or 5 teams, something like it. It was wild. So it's no longer just the number 1 contenders that are fatal 4. Now we're having the matches themselves. Just every team on the roster, send them out there. Every team on the brand, send them out there. So we were talking about that in the live stream, and sure enough, WWE says they have to decide new number 1 contenders for the tag titles for the ladies, and they announce a fatal 4-way tag team, tag team match. Dakota Kai and Kairi Sane. of Damage Control, Shayna Baszler, and Zoey Stark, who, by the way, came across Sonya Deville backstage before this match. And Sonya Deville was almost trying to recruit Zoey Stark, and Shayna came up and said, we'll have none of it. But there was rumblings earlier in the day, that Sonya Deville was backstage. We just didn't know if she was going to be utilized. She was in that backstage segment. Looks like they're going to have something with her, Shayna, and Zoey. I think that's the perfect mix. That is what's going to help Shayna and Zoey get to the next level, and maybe you can start to build an actual tag division around that trio, especially with Sonya as a manager until she gets back into the ring, if she decides to. But anyway, again, Fatal 4-Way tag team number one contender match. Dakota, Kai, and Kairi, Shayna Baszler and Zoey, Ivy, Nile, and Maxxine Dupri, and Carter and Chance, who's perhaps, I would say, if I had to choose like a tag team that I support more than the others, Carter and Chance, because they just really, they devote so much time into innovation. They really love being a tag team. They love doing what they do. They're always innovative. I like Carter and Chance. So those were your four teams in this match. I don't have a clue what happened in this match, nor do I care, right? You guys know how I feel about multi-man or multi-lady schmaz matches. It's a circus sideshow, and they're the cat toys, and we're supposed to be the cats that are just like watching the ping pong balls. No, thank you. I have no interest in doing that with my time. So I don't know what happened in this match, and that's exactly what I put in my notes. What I can tell you is who won. The finish saw Baszler and Stark victorious. As much as I like Carter and Chance, that's the right call, man. I mean, Shayna and Zoey are losing their matchups in the tournament. They have gotten nothing done together. They're just done. At this point, they're a stone's throw away from being in the next round of releases, unfortunately, because I just don't understand the value they're bringing. The company isn't putting any stock into them. They're not delivering any performances or matches that's making the crowd go, damn, I can't wait to see them again. Sadly, the booking has just been off. That's why I say Sonya can greatly help them. And this this at least together is their last chance, right? This to make it as a tag. This is it. And I doubt very much that they're going to be the ones to dethrone Bianca and Jade Cargill, unless like we find out there's an injury with either Bianca or Jade. A real one, not the one they're selling with Bianca on Friday night. But unless we find out something like that, they're not going to be the ones. But if you do the story properly, this could greatly elevate, finally, Zoey and Shayna to a place they desperately need to be placed at. So Zoey and Shayna win this matchup. It's just now you got to get people to believe that Zoey and Shayna are badasses. Because you got to remember, the tour loop that they're doing right now, guys, they've had Shayna and Zoey lose to Natty and Tegan Nox 3 times within the last month. Since April 17th, Zoey and Shayna has lost 3 times to Natty and Tegan Nox. Tegan Nox is running around with 2 massive leg braces. I think it was the MCL or ACL or both. But she tore up those knees pretty bad in NXT, but back to back too. I mean, so she moves not at 100%, and she's with Natty, and they beat Zoey and Shayna, 2 badasses. So it's not a good look when your tour loop, you're just going to these different cities and towns and you're just losing like that. And then they see on TV and they're supposed to now think that you're going to beat Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair. You're losing to Tegan Nox and you're going to beat Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair? Like, good luck making people believe that. That's the issue. We go into the main event. This was the King of the Ring semifinal, Gunther versus Jey Uso. Jey Uso defeats Dragonov last week. You can't possibly do something like that again, man. You cannot. I mean, Super Uso out of nowhere. Gunther, too. After Gunther became the longest reigning IC title holder, you built this dude like a monster. Okay, Dragonov, you want to say, listen, A lot of the main roster crowd, they just didn't know Dragonov anyway. We needed him to take the L anyway. We didn't want to do it against Gunther. We had Jey Uso do okay, whatever. But Gunther, you can't make that. You can't do it. You just can't. No matter how much you love Jey Uso, no matter how much you like going in the Starbucks and yeeting all around, right? You yeet as you grab your cheese Danish. You yeet as you're ordering your vanilla latte. You yeet around the block. You yeet into your mama. You're just yeeting your ass away. That's awesome. There's no way you're beating Gunther, bro. Realistically, you can't do that. So this was a big decision by Paul Levesque McMahon. Thankfully, when it was all said and done, he made the right one. But before we got to that point, Uso kicks out of a Gunther bomb. Jey Uso kicked out of a Gunther bomb. And he wasn't done. He kicked out of a Gunther top rope splash. So Jey Uso simplistically defeated Dragonov with an Uso splash last week. This was a Gunther splash. All of that weight, that big dude, top rope, flying splash. Jey Uso's looking up at the lights for 46 seconds, you're thinking, right? No. Kick out at 2. He wasn't done. He then kicked out of a JBL-type clothesline from Gunther. I mean, this was a clothesline that would rattle you to next Tuesday. Kicked out. They want us to believe at this point that Jey Uso has now possessed superpowers. Right? Jey Uso is now, right? We used to have fun and call Cena Super Cena. No, this was Super Uso beating Dragonov. And just no matter what Gunther did in this match, Jey Uso just won't lose. How is this realistic? It's so odd. There's ways you could do this match that does not devalue all of Gunther's moves. Now when you get to a pay-per-view and you want to do something like this with a Dragonov, which at that point you already devalued that as well, because we've already seen Dragonov lose to fucking Jey Uso in a splash, so who needs to see him and Gunther now have a war? Fuck the war when you can't even win a little battle. So now you have Gunther doing all of his top moves. He's doing a top rope splash. He's doing the Gunther bomb, a JBL clothesline. Jey Uso's like, not today, bro. Not today, bro. Let me use my left arm here on this one. Not today, bro. What are we doing? You're going to want to save that. Save it. The Gunther bomb is supposed to be badass. A top rope splash from Gunther. Damn, again, you should be out till next Tuesday on that. These are the things, man. And this is, as a real reviewer, these are the things I have to dissect, right? We're not talking about it right now just as a fan who's just enjoying wrestling. We're not doing that, right? This is a real honest review of what works and doesn't, what is good, what is bad, what's great and what's unfortunately ugly. What is helping these wrestlers, helping the company, helping the shows, helping the product, helping Endeavor. These are the things we talk about, right? That's what happens. I'm a real reviewer and critic of this stuff, and this is the stuff we have to dissect. Like, you have to be very careful on when and how you utilize things like movesets. This was a match that definitely did not need that, just to bolster Jey Uso's status for him to lose. He lost, but wow, he gave it everything. This isn't a Rudy storyline. There's times for Rudy, right? There's times for Rocky. Sami Zayn plays the underdog story. I get it. Cody Rhodes just cannot get by okay. But Jey Uso having a Cinderella story, I'm not understanding this at all. And this is somebody who puts Jey Uso on such a pedestal. Much love and respect to that dude. I'm not getting this whole singles run. I don't understand why we turned him into Super Uso all of a sudden. But in the process, we're just devaluing Dragonov and we're diminishing Gunther's moveset now. That's the type of match you would have with like Roman Reigns, you would think, right? Or should have had with Dragonov. All of those moves, and this dude will not stay down for that 3 count. Anyway, thankfully the right call was eventually made. And for the finish, Gunther defeats the Yeet Master via pass-out submission. So, all right, you're just not going to be pinned. There's nothing, I can drop a piano on you, right? Taylor Swift is having a concert the next day. They've already got her piano and equipment all high above. The piano drops. The piano falls right on Jey Uso. And he still kicks out. So, he just passes him out. All right, we'll take it. Pass out submission. This does not rectify or make up for the massive booking botch from last week and Dragonov losing, but... and that's a big but. At least Levesque McMahon didn't double down on what could have been a King Uso or even a King Tonga. No. Nobody trying to buy that. And you got to believe with Gunther winning that Randy Orton is now going to defeat Tama Tonga on Friday. And this is going to set up a massive matchup. Orton versus Gunther. And just as we originally had thought when this tournament was announced and Gunther was the first name added into it, this tournament was always about Gunther, and that's how it's going to be. You gotta, King Orton sounds weird. Nobody needs to see Randy Orton walking around in a crown and a robe. This was tailor-made for Gunther from the jump, and that's exactly what is going to happen. Gunther wins this King of the Ring. That's it. That's not a prediction. That is a spoiler. Because what's the alternative? Tama Tonga's going to beat Randy Orton? Gunther versus Tonga, heel versus heel? There's no reason for that. You shouldn't be doing that. Because one heel is unfortunately going to out-heel the other. And that's only going to devalue and diminish that other heel. That's why that cannot be called for, and that's why Paul Levesque McMahon has to stop the face versus face matchups that he does all the time and the heel versus heel matches he does all the time. I'm not buying in that Gunther and Tama Tonga is going to be your final, and if it's Randy and Gunther, which it should be anyway, Randy walking around in a crown and calling himself King Randy just seems odd to me. This is Gunther's. And the last thing I'll say about this main event and the show in its totality is that there was timing issues yet again. The second that Gunther passed out Jey Uso, the second Michael Cole just fastly says, Gunther's moving on to the finals of the King of the Ring tournament, and we are out to the next USA show. It ended the show with the pass out. No cliffhanger, no nothing. No selling Gunther's. It's almost like they're just like, I don't know if, maybe Levesque McMahon was like, give him an extra minute, even though they were supposed to just wrap things up with that minute. And they're like, give him an extra minute of wrestling. But then you end the show like you're Bush League, like you're amateur. Like the submission happened and we just went off the air. Like you're telling your audience, yeah, this is pretty scripted, pretty planned. We know that, but we're supposed to be suspending the disbelief, or as I call it, suspending belief. Right? You don't want to just expose the magic tricks. But you went right off the air. That tells us, okay, there had to be a winner right at that second because it's exactly at 11 o'clock. You don't want to do that. You want to wrap things up. You want to make it seem like, oh, there was still time left, but that pass out came. And then you have time to wrap things up and really sell something and sell the finals. Sell the Orton-Tonga match on Friday. Maybe something happens backstage. Here's a wild concept. You end your show with an actual cliffhanger. So Gunther does that. Cool. Backstage, something's happening. Braun Breaker just speared all of Alpha Academy through the building, right? There's bricks all around. Alpha Academy just went through a building. It's slightly a joke. But you could have done something backstage that really ends the show on a high note, right? No. Pass out, Michael Cole rushes to fucking finish, and we are off the air. I'm like, whoa, what just happened? If you blinked, Raw was off the air. You didn't know who won. BC Amplified. Until next time, and there will be that next time. I appreciate it, guys. That was the Raw 5 2024 review. We'll do this again real soon. As I said, SmackDown is coming up this Friday. Not sure if there's going to be a review on that, though, because Saturday afternoon is their next big PLE, King and Queen of the Ring from Saudi. I do hope to be live with you guys for that. So Saturday afternoon, stop by the channel, say what's up. Even if you can't stay for the whole PLE, we'd love to see you up in the chat saying what's up. So I hope to be live Saturday afternoon. Either way, we're going to have a massive review of King and Queen of the Ring. We'll have the finals on that card. There's championship matches. Of course, you got that big exhibition title match. Logan Paul, Cody Rhodes. Some people are still, I don't need to see that. I don't want to see that. Speak for yourself. That's going to be a match of the year candidate, if not the match of the year thus far. Logan Paul, Cody Rhodes. That's not a prediction either. In the words of Paul Heyman, that is a spoiler. Also, another spoiler is there will be that next time. We'll do this again real soon. Top guys, we are out. BC in the unit saying check you. Peace.